Welcome back to a very special episode of ATTV. I'm your host, Ben McLeod, founder of Convey Bio. We've got an expert panel with the plans to basically have a takeaways of the conference. There's been lots of great conversations, lots of great presentations, and so we're just going to get the thoughts from a bunch of different people from across the swath of the industry. So I'm very excited to be joined by Carl, by Jennifer, and by Edwin. So if I can get each of you to kind of introduce in turn, and then we'll get into conversation. We'll start with you, Carl.
Great. Thanks for having me, Ben. I'm Carl. I'm an associate partner at DeciBio. We're a strategy boutique consulting shop. I lead our advanced therapies practice, and another fabulous facilitate almost in the books.
Thanks, Ben. My name is Jennifer Manning. I'm the founder CEO of Como Biosciences, a next generation precision genome engineering technology company that delivers large DNA cargo. And I'm also a venture partner at Genesis Biocapital, and I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me, Ben.
Glad. Edwin.
Great to be here, Ben. Edwin Stone, CEO of Cellular Origins. We're a robotic automation company that's enabling cell therapy at scale.
Right on. I'm really excited for this. I think we've got a nice intersection of the entire industry, so I think we'll have a great conversation. So I guess we can just start in terms of, what are some standout moments that that you guys have seen here at the conference? And again, we'll start with you, Carl.
Sure. I think there's muted optimism across cell and gene therapy. If we think about within gene therapy in particular, something like AAV has had a rough go the last few years. I think you're seeing it come out the other end finally with a refined pipeline, successful launches in Sarepta's Elevidys. So I think that cautious optimism has come through across the conference. Across cell therapy, I think you see similar. You're seeing incredible impact for patients, and finally the field thinking really deeply about ultimately how do you manufacture and deliver these therapies at scale. You have groups like Cellular Origins with Ed, roboticizing these things, and the field really coming together and partnering. I know Cellular Origins just partnered with Fresenius partnered with Ori. So I think there's a lot of excitement around that.
Definitely. Jennifer.
Yeah, I think coming out of JPM, there's a lot of interest in deal making. There's significant hopeful perspective on the size of the markets, the addressable markets, and what can be achieved by combining interesting science and technology and being able to deliver for patients, as well as investors and founders. And I think coming out of JPM here was a nice tailwind talking about not only the size of the markets, but the regulatory perspectives and the approvals that are forthcoming, and the combination of the innovation at science and investment dollars paired with a positive regulatory outlook is really going to make a positive impact in the near future for patients, which we're all here to serve.
I really echo those things. I think sitting here last year, it was very much, it felt like it was a 50-50 between the optimists and the pessimists, and I hate to say it, but I think the pessimists were right. There was an expectation perhaps that era of free money was going to come back. It didn't, and I think everyone that was sitting waiting for it last year was just sitting there having a quiet year. I think this year there is more optimism. I think the muted optimism, I think, is a good phrase. I think what's driving that is a recognition. This industry, and I think others, are not going to be driven by free money anymore. What's going to happen is companies that are really focused on how they're actually going to realize value, how they're going to realize revenues and ultimately get to profit, they need a plan, and they need a plan that's going to do that without just relying on external capital at low interest rates. And I think broadly, actually, that's positive. I think that drives some really healthy behaviors of forcing us to focus on fundamentals. And whilst this industry is really about the patients, of course, it is driven by investment. So I think now having that framework, knowing what the new rules are, I think is helpful to everybody. And I think for me, the real positive is to have been sit here, to wander around the show, to hear the talks. There was a concern, I think, as 2024 played out, and we all heard some pretty sad stories about businesses either struggling or going away, that actually there is still real strength in the industry. Someone much more knowledgeable than mine says great companies are built in difficult times, and I think we're starting to see that. I think we're seeing some great technologies still coming through, still great therapies, and I think 2024 might not have resulted in that. I think 2024 we could have lost some really good companies, and I think actually there is some real strength here in the industry to see all that still here, seeing people trying to work through that, seeing people coming together in partnership. I think that's a really healthy sign for our industry. It feels like we're starting to mature.
Yeah, to add to all of that, what I've seen that I think is quite exciting, And kind of my prediction for 2025 is I think that this is the year where we really start to see the technology catch up with the science. There's just so many really interesting advancements and innovations that are starting to come online that are really helping in terms of reducing timelines, reducing the cost of goods, and we'll start seeing more of that. Jennifer would be one example of one such technology that I'm really excited to see impact the field in a very positive way. So I guess if we're thinking about the actual sessions that we've been able to get to here at the conference, was there one particular moment or something that stood out to you guys? And we'll start with you again, Carl.
Oh, I love when the field gets together.
Yeah.
And you get everyone effectively in one room, and you can hear what they're seeing, understand what they're grappling with, hear the successes, hear some of the challenges. You get to see, new therapies come about, new technologies, like Como, like cellular origins, although maybe not new, but you get to see their development and what they could potentially do to impact the field and ultimately bring, benefit to patients. That's my highlight. It's really just getting to, walk and skulk the halls.
Fair enough.
Ben, there's a couple highlights for me, one of which was in the Women in Advanced Therapy Summit when Becky shared a quote that I wrote down, and I think I'll remember for a long time. She said, investing in women isn't just good business, it's transformative. And she reminded everyone in the room, both men and women, the importance of, let's not just invest in ourselves, let's invest one another and in the future. And really, this is the way. And I think that really left a real positive impact on the audience. And just a reminder to, yes, you have to invest in each other, in one another, to get where you want to go in the future.
A rising tide lifts all boats. Yeah.
Absolutely. And another personal highlight for me was last night at the Advanced Therapies Awards. I had the honor of surprisingly being able to sit next to Catherine High, the recipient of the Lifetime Achievement Award. So not only did I find her acceptance speech incredibly motivating and moving and wildly inspiring, but being able to sit next to her and her lovely husband through dinner and just get to know them and their journey and how they met and learn about their family, for me, was very touching and a moment I will surely not forget.
Yeah, she's an absolute legend.
And I think, actually, just to follow on from that, I think for me, one of the great things about these events, and this one has not let down, is it is about the people. Of course, it's about the patients. So the plenary, once again, to be able to hear from both patients and patient advocates, I think it's easy to overlook how privileged we are. I mean, whilst there's a few thousand people that attend these conferences, actually the vast majority of people in our industry don't necessarily have that opportunity. And I think actually I always feel there's a duty on me and actually with my company, but I think we should all see this more widely in the industry to make sure we're sharing that, because to be able to sit in the room and hear from those people, you can see a video, you can hear about it indirectly, but there is something about having them on stage in front of you that is always moving, and every time that happens, always people walk out and comment they've got a tear in their eye. Even the most hard-nosed of investors can't come away with that and suddenly realise actually this is really meaningful what we're doing here. So that's thing number one. Thing number two, and it wasn't any one session. What really felt powerful was the number of sessions where we're seeing that variety of people now talking. So we're seeing people from CDMOs, from the equipment company, from therapy companies, all join together. And I think having that mixture within panels, I'm not sure we were seeing that a few years ago. And so seeing that different perspective, I think has been great.
Right on. Yeah. For me, I was quite interested to like I say, one of the main takeaway points for me was listening to the Saudi delegation presentation. It's really interesting to see how they're kind of looking at the inspiration of Singapore and of Ireland, and how those have kind of become biotech hubs that distribute to the region that surrounds them, and they kind of have that aspiration as well. Hey, here's a huge unmet need in that part of the world. Here's how we can become the center hub that services these populations that have a real need for genetic therapies and cell therapies. So it's interesting to see that the great innovation that mostly has been in North America and in Europe is starting to get to the other parts of the world where there is incredible need for these therapies, and hopefully some of the differences that kind of comes along with a new country that's starting to look at cell and gene therapies. It's going to allow them to move fast and break things perhaps in a way that some of the other parts of the world haven't been able to, and potentially that puts the rest of the world on notice in terms of some of the ways that we can really move at the speed of science, ideally.
Absolutely agree. I think we are truly going global now, and I've always felt this is a global challenge. Actually, if there's something that sort of worried me about the field and events like this, is often can become a bit US Europe centric. We look at China, obviously massively in the news at the moment. I think it's a worry for me that if we're trying to tackle a problem like this separately, that's a concern. I think the more we can come together across geographies, and so great to see a powerhouse like Saudi and the Middle East more generally starting to move into this field. I think we need that, it's about all sorts of things. It's about the people, it's about the capital that brings, but it's also about that global perspective, and I completely agree. I think perhaps not having some of the same baggage that we have, having been in the space for 10, 15 years in US and Europe, might be really good at opening up some new channels.
I think it goes back to collaboration, kind of the point you made, Jen, of the pharma companies, the tool companies, enabling technologies. I think you've seen more and more partnerships through the end of last year and into obviously JP Morgan and the start of this year. I think, hopefully that continues. You get the right stakeholders around the table to create sort of those purpose-built tools and capabilities for what are ultimately purpose-built medicines.
Excellent. So let's take a moment just to talk about some of the different main platforms inside of cell and gene therapy. So I guess for gene therapies, what would be your take, Carl, in terms of, we've got viral vectors, we've got non-viral solutions, we've got other modalities that are starting to pop up. What's your take?
I mean, it's been a busy year. You had AAV sort of with a tough couple of years coming out the other end. Elevidys, as I mentioned, has been, I think, a bright spot from a launch standpoint.
Yeah.
And then the development pipeline is really streamlined and healthy. Logical indications. Then you look at Lenti, the use of that directly in vivo has really exploded. And you had Peter Marks just last week at JP Morgan touch on, some of the previously thought warnings around secondary T-cell malignancies, and understanding that wasn't caused from the editing. So really clearing the way for additional use there. And on the non-viral side, you have just tremendous growth in terms of the delivery capability of getting and editing technology to the cell or target directly in the body, which could be just transformative. But it comes back to editing technologies ultimately, and being able to deliver those precise editors where they need to go.
Speaking of editing technologies, what do you think, Jennifer?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I absolutely agree with what both of you shared, and that is the reason why we believe in Como. Como is going to enable in vivo gene editing. Will be paired with the technologies such as LNP, VLP, or non-viral delivery for really opening the world of possibilities for in vivo cell therapy. What's really exciting is more of the near-term applications with regards to rapid, stable packaging producer cell lines for viral particles, for hypoimmune cells, whether you're looking at a universal cell line to generate iPSCs, to differentiate, looking at being able to enable the end application through an upstream technology such as Como. One of the first applications is cell line development. The implications for AAV and LV are broad, as we've just shared. AAV and LV continue to be promising tools, but you need site specificity with high efficiency and the ability to deliver a large cargo. And that's what Como is unlocking. And while the technologies have advanced in genome engineering, Como has filled in the gaps with regards to immunogenicity, with regards to large DNA payload delivery, and efficiency of integration. So I'm really excited and hopeful for the future and the ways in which Como's technology can be paired with others. I think that we're in a world of the importance of technology stacking, and through a licensing business model, which is unique for genome engineering, we have a strategy in which we're going to be partnering with the delivery tools. We'll be partnering with the innovators. We'll be partnering with the service providers to come up with ways in which our solutions enable, whether it's packaging and producer cell lines for viral particles, or whether it's tackling the complex supply chain with regards to bulk plasmid and potentially eliminating transient transfection, moving to stable. This allows the innovators to focus on construct optimization to deliver the application that is the hope and the belief of the future for the field.
Right on. Excellent. And we'll get you, Edwin, to provide your perspective for cell therapies, I guess. I know you work very closely with a lot of people in that area.
And I think you made a really good point earlier on about finally we're seeing the technology and the engineering catching up with the science. And I'd actually go a step further. I think the thing that gives me great encouragement about how some of these platforms are now evolving is it feels like they're really coming together with the biology. I think for a long time we've had the luxury of almost the engineering and the technology and the biology being able to progress in parallel, and that's got both in the worlds of cell therapy, but also just more generally in what we've been able to do in terms of therapeutics. That's got us so far. And it's enabled us to tackle perhaps some of the lower hanging fruit. And of course, it's given us an incredible basis for the medical science we have now. But I think the future for me is about these coming much more closely together. And so fascinating what you're saying there, Jennifer, about how you're looking to bring something new, not just on a technology side, but how you're working with people. And I think that's going to be really important going forward. It's not just about the science, the technology, and the engineering. It's actually about how we work together. We see it a lot in what we do. I mentioned we're a robotics company, but of course what we do at the end of the day is help produce biology. And so it's really important that everyone that's working on that has that understanding of what it means to produce biology, whether the sensitivities, everything from shear rates to cleaning and all of the kind of wonderful things that scare and upset and result in unhappy cells, as we often smirk about. And I think that education and that evolution of the industry has become really powerful. You're seeing many more bioengineers and the likes, which I think is great evolution for the field. And I think for me that's something that when we're thinking about platforms is really important, is not just the fact they're all progressing, but the fact they're literally coming together. And it feels like for me that's what the next 10 years are going to be. If we're going to tackle the harder problems, they can't be tackled with different groups working separately, whether from disciplines, whether from organizations. We've just got to come really close together.
We're stronger together. I like it. Well, I think that's a great place to end. Thank you again for everyone watching. Thank you to this great panel of providing your insights here on the final day of the conference. I'm excited for 2025. We're in for a great year, I think. Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, everyone.